Hello, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happen to be watching this. Adam Clery from FourFourTwo here, and Arsenal have a problem. They went away to Atalanta in their first Champions League game and got a perfectly fine 0-0 draw, in my opinion. That's not even a disastrous result, even though they were reliant on 𝗕𝗫𝗧𝗏 making what has to be classified as one of the most Clery-esque saves you've ever seen to get them it. But the problem is not in the result, the problem is in how they played to get it, and specifically how they are being forced to play without this man. Life for Arsenal without Martin Odegaard looks like it's going to be rough. Now, before we start, I just want to make sure the vibes are right for this. This isn't going to be an overly negative video. Arsenal were without Ødegaard for the North London derby and did a spectacular tactical job on them, and would, for a little bit of better finishing in this, could have done a similar job on Atalanta. However, all the Arsenal fans I know have described both those matches as a bit of a tough watch, so we're going to explain why that is and what steps Mikel Arteta is taking to adapt. So first up, what does Martin Odegaard do? What makes him so special? Why is he so important to this system? And if you are an Arsenal fan, you probably know most of this already. What makes him such a special player is his ability to get on the ball regardless of what state the game is in. If Arsenal are dominating teams and they've got really good controlled possession in their half, he is the player that finds the gaps between the very deep, very compact lines, receives it and moves the ball either out to the flanks or creates chances for the team. And you saw that a million times last season too. Very strict banks of four. Somehow Ødegaard finds a little pocket and either links up with Saka and Ben White. They do some nice little clever rotations like that, or he just gets the ball into the box and makes something happen. But likewise, when Arsenal are building out from the back and the opposition try and disrupt that by pressing them really high and stopping them getting the ball into the middle, he's the one who drops out of these attacking areas into the deeper places to get on the ball again, turn and move them up the pitch. And in both of these situations, what the opposition is trying to do is deny Arsenal the specific areas of the pitch they want to get the ball into, and it takes really, really special players to not only recognise where the gaps are appearing, but to get into them, ask for the ball, and then do something productive with it, rather than just passing it back to whoever gave it to them. And Martin Odegaard, undisputably, is one of, if not the best players in the entire Premier League, probably even Europe, at doing those very specific things. This is both his heat map and his pass map from just a couple of weeks ago when Arsenal played Wolves, and you can see these two things in action. Now, Arsenal mostly dominated that game, so you can see he spent most of his afternoon in this bit of space where he likes to be, getting on the ball between their lines and making things happen in an attacking sense. But also, Wolves did go there with a bit of ambition, so there were periods of the game where they really did press Arsenal and try to disrupt their build-up, and that's what this little splodge here is. He dropped in to help out, to beat that press, to get them through that line and then up the pitch. And the main thing you need to take away from this visual is how many of these arrows are going backwards. And it is literally just one. Only once in that entire game, when he went looking for the ball in these spaces, was he unable to either get turned and move them up the pitch or immediately find a teammate who could. And this is just how Arsenal like to play under Arteta. It is all about this central progression through the middle of the pitch. It's why you often see the fullbacks inverting into that area, so they've got an extra man in those spaces. It's why the forward, whoever that is, tends to drop off from the central areas to leave space for the wide attackers to get in. They want to be in this area, and to get there, you tend to have to pass it through the middle. And thus, why Martin Odegaard is so important is because it doesn't matter what the opposition are doing or where they are, you've always got that central option that can move you forward. But, as you saw against Atalanta, they're still a team very capable of controlling possession, they're still excellent at circulating the ball around, but without this particular option being as reliably available, the compromises and the adaptations they're having to make are not proving easy. Now, first of all, and I think the thing most people picked up on actually watching the game, was that they do still want to try and do this. Declan Rice got into these areas, Kai Havertz got into these areas, Trossard was even doing it when he came on, but Arsenal kept finding that when they did find these players, it either came straight back the way it had come from, or they lost possession. And thus, as the game wore on, they became understandably more and more reluctant to even try and do it. Like, this is deep into the second half, and throughout this move, there's There's so many times where you could play that ball if Ødegaard was there, but neither the player with the ball has the confidence to do it, nor the receiving player is really asking for it. Now, this is the combined pass map last night for both Declan Rice and 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏, who I thought did a reasonable job in the circumstances, but where you just look at this and think back to that Martin Odegaard one, how many of these are going backwards? So don't get me wrong, they absolutely did their best. There's a couple of really good passes forwards in this part of the pitch, but if you just sort of look at how many times it comes to them and they've got to go backwards, they've got to go sideways, they just don't have that ability that Ødegaard has to get it, turn and go. But Arteta is not a dope, like he's aware of this as a problem, and if the North London derby should have showed you anything, it's that he is capable of getting this side to adapt. And lo and behold, Arsenal's plan B, if that's what you want to call it, was if we can't neatly play through the press, we will just play right over the top of it. And just to go back to that Wolves game for a second, because it was a very Arsenal performance, this is David Raya's pass map. His job during the build-up is to step into the back line, play it left and right to 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏, invite a player on, make them harder to press, to play short. But he's not a one-trick pony, though. He can go long if the situation merits it, but as you will no doubt observe just by looking at this, there are far fewer long passes than there are nice short ones left and right, and also that's where all the red ones are, because it's a far less accurate way to play. So how did that look from last night? Well, first off, these are all his completed passes. You'll see there's so few of them going left and right. He goes long so much more often, but if we also show you his unsuccessful passes, then yes, yikes. He spent most of the night going long over the top of the opposition's press, and Arsenal, as yet, are not brilliant at this. He gave the ball away doing this absolutely loads. That might seem a bit counterintuitive because you're constantly hearing about how good Arsenal are in the air and how good they are at set pieces, but most of that is down to the fact they've got four very big lads at the back, usually playing into this area of the pitch where Saka's got to try and win it, and Martinelli's got to try and win it, or Jesus has got to try and win it. Far less likely to work. I said right at the start of the video, Arsenal were just some slightly better finishing away from doing another proper job on a very good team here. This is like the 75th minute. It's late in the game. Arsenal have a goal kick. Atalanta are pressing them still really, really high. Now, what Raya would normally do here is go short into 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏, but just look at this freeze frame. If he gets the ball, what are his options going to be? He can't go into the central area, which is what he would want to do, because Atalanta have a 4v2 here. They're begging Arsenal to try and do that. And even if he goes wide, then this press shuffles over. They've got another player in front ready to lock on. That ball would just come straight back. So instead, he does the sensible thing. He goes really long over the press, and this time, it works. Havertz does unbelievably well to win this ball, bring it down, get it under control, hold off the defender, and lay it off to Sterling. And for the first time pretty much in the entire match now, they're in. They create this absolutely golden opportunity for Gabriel Martinelli that he simply has to take. Like, this is what Arteta will have spoken about all week leading up to the game. It's what he'll have reminded them of in the changing room before they went out there. If we can't find a way to play through the middle, we might get something by doing this. And when that chance comes, you have to take it. And it's so similar to the Tottenham game. Like, they were not on top in that match. They were not creating chances at will the way they normally do, but they knew they would still be solid and dependable and resolute at the back. And if that one chance comes along, be it from a corner or a long ball, if they take it, they win the game. And this is that moment. This is that 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏 header, but this time they beam it over the bar. And I mean, like, don't get me wrong with this. Against most teams Arsenal come up against, they're still going to dominate the ball. They're still going to create a lot of chances. They're still going to find the ability to have that central progression. But if you want to win things, you want to be at the very top, then there are these games like the North London derby, like Atalanta away, like Manchester City this weekend, where you're not going to be able to do that without a player of that quality. And what I think should genuinely encourage Arsenal fans is they've clearly already found that alternate route to goal. They found that other effective way of playing. They just have to be lethal in the execution of it. Against Tottenham, they were, but against Atalanta, they weren't. And their entire season is going to hinge on which of these two performances becomes more typical in the time he's out. And just as weird as this is going to sound, and I've not got any nice visuals or graphics, I'm just soapboxing here, right? But this whole thing is why they won't go out and buy a centre-forward. Because if they had this, like, big, burly, strong, clever, goal-scoring, lethal guy up front who they bought in the summer or the winter or any of the previous transfer windows, they would have probably won that game quite comfortably. The North London derby would have been a very different game. They'd have a much better chance against Manchester City. But they're only in this position because their number one choice of how to play through Martin Odegaard has been denied to them. And the money they would have to spend to bring someone in who could make that kind of a difference, you can't spend on someone who isn't normally going to play. Like, they don't need the goals. Like, Arsenal have scored enough goals in the last 2 seasons to win this or any league, because when they can get these right players on a pitch, they're virtually irresistible. It's just freak scenarios like this, that's when they would see the benefit. And nobody's going to come to your club who's any good under the proviso of, well, if he gets injured, we might go long into you. Sound good? But look, right, I'll put it to you this way. Okay, Arsenal, without Martin Odegaard, are probably going to be absolutely fine. Just the problem is, at the start of this season, the aspirations were not to just be absolutely fine. The aspirations were to be the fucking champions. But anyway, not to worry though, just the entirely trivial challenge of Manchester City up next. So if you are an Arsenal fan and you've got any thoughts, feelings, poetry, verse, the true song of your heart about life without Martin Odegaard, please do get that in the comments below, because we would dearly, dearly like to know how you're feeling about all this. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it But as ever, if the thought of a live YouTube comment section fills you with both dread and awe, you can get me across all the social medias at Adam Clery, Clery. The 442 socials are in the corner of the video. And until next time, which will be Monday after Arsenal versus Man City, that's the video, I will see you soon. Best of luck out there. Stay safe.